All right, well, welcome back to Unit 4. This is your first topic of Unit 4, Topic 1. This unit is Technological Innovations from 1450 to 1750. So let's go ahead and get started. So the thematic learning objective for this unit is going to be technology and innovation. By the end of this lesson, I'd like you to explain how cross-cultural interactions resulted in the diffusion of technology and facilitated changes in patterns of trade and travel from 1450 to 1750. Now, historically, knowledge, scientific learning, and technology from the classical, Islamic, and Asian worlds spread, facilitating European technological developments and innovation. The developments included the production of new tools, innovations in ship designs, and improved understanding of regional wind and current patterns, all of which made transoceanic travel and trade possible. So let's start with a learning objective question. You should be able to answer this question with relevant details after completing this topic. So, how did cross-cultural interactions result in the diffusion of technology and facilitate changes in patterns of trade and travel from 1450 to 1750? The three major components of this question are: 1, what cross-cultural connections are we talking about? 2, what specific technologies were diffused or transferred? And 3, what were the changes in trade and travel patterns? The next slide will offer an overview of the answers to each part of this question. So the cross-cultural interactions we briefly explore are the Europeans' interactions with both Song China and Islamic empires. The cause of these interactions before the 1450-1750 time period was improved navigational and military tools for the Europeans. The transfer of these technologies to the Europeans resulted in the ability to travel both more efficiently and cover much longer distances away from coastal areas than before. So in addition, the question posed by the learning objective, you should also be familiar with why Europeans wanted to expand maritime travel capabilities during this time period. European maritime empires, they expanded greatly in this time period. This is known as the Age of Exploration because the ability to travel longer distances via oceans grew considerably as Europeans faced various pressures that made maritime travel, exploration, and trade a priority. The first 3 answers to the question posed give some insight into why individuals or groups may have wanted to leave Europe in search of new places via maritime travel. The 4th reason, however, deals with a larger problem facing European empires and their dominance on the world stage. Tough competition from Middle Eastern traders in the Indian Ocean caused Europeans to look for other ways to reach Asia for the purpose of trade. Christopher Columbus's voyage is one example of a European explorer attempting to find an alternate route to Asia. So let's discuss interactions through trade. As you might recall from Unit 2, both the Silk Roads and the Trans-Saharan trade routes resulted in the diffusion of cultures, ideas, and technology. It was some of those interactions that helped set the stage for the huge expansion of maritime exploration that we are going to explore in Unit 4. Several specific technological innovations came to Europe through those 2 major trade routes. Some of those include the compass, the astrolabe, gunpowder, and the lateen sail, which will be covered in the next slide. So looking at technological innovations. These are some of the major innovations which allowed for the expansion of ocean travel in this time period. The compass originated in Han, China, and was further developed during the Song dynasty before being transferred to Europe. Astronomical charts, not pictured here specifically, came from various cultures in ancient times, including the Greeks during their classical period, and the Chinese. Better maps and astronomical charts helped explorers navigate with better accuracy. The astrolabe was invented by the Greeks and improved by Muslim navigators in the 1100s before making its way to Europeans. The lateen sail is especially important because it transformed how ships could harness the wind. Instead of only being able to catch wind from one direction, as was the case with earlier square sails, the triangular lateen sail could catch wind from two directions, making ships able to go farther and faster. So let's discuss trade winds and currents. Increased knowledge of currents and trade winds greatly propelled ocean navigation forward in the 1450 to 1750 time period. I'd like to point out the orange dotted line on the map. Before Portuguese navigators learned how to use currents and trade winds to their advantage, Portuguese ships would sail down the coast of Africa along the orange-marked route. To get back to Portugal, they would simply retrace the same route, going against the Canary Current. Once they learned about the currents, they began to return from the coast of West Africa to Portugal by sailing out into the ocean and utilizing trade winds to get up to the Portugal Current near the Azores Islands, which are not marked on this map, and using the current to arrive in Portugal. Though it was longer in distance, this route was much faster than trying to fight the Canary Current along the west coast of Africa. This is just one example of a specific use of currents and trade winds, but there are others in Asia and in the Americas as well. And that takes us to new technology in Europe. The transferred innovations, the new knowledge of currents and trade winds, better maps, and the pressures that Europeans faced to further maritime exploration led to the development of new ships that would lead the way in the age of exploration. All of these things combined helped Europeans to establish and maintain large maritime empires across the globe. 3 of those new ships are discussed in greater detail on the following slides. So let's start with the Portuguese caravel. The Portuguese caravel was designed especially for longer expeditions. These ships were smaller and much more maneuverable than earlier ships, which were meant strictly for military encounters near coastal areas. The lateen sail, that triangular sail that we have been discussing for some time, was borrowed from earlier Muslim ships called dhow ships, which were used for coastal sailing and fishing. So when the lateen sails came available, they made the caravel able to undertake much longer journeys due to its ability to harness wind in multiple directions. Previous ships with square sails could not travel as well because they were completely reliant on the wind blowing in one correct direction. The new system of sails, combined with the lightweight body of the ship, made the caravel the preferred sailing vessel for Portuguese explorers such as Henry the Navigator, Christopher Columbus, and Bartholomew Diaz. The caravel became the best long-distance ship of its time. The next one we're going to discuss is called the Portuguese carack. The carack is a Portuguese ship based on the caravel. It is larger overall and usually has 1 to 2 more masts than its smaller caravel counterpart. They are recognizable by their combination of square and lateen sail rigs. These ships could be used for travel, cargo, and for military ventures. I want you to notice the cannons on the rear sides of the carrack in the picture on this slide. I have a question for you to consider. Why might a versatile ship be necessary for expeditions to new, unknown places? So think about that as we travel to the next slide. Okay, I want you to take a minute. Take a really good look at this photo and then the question on the left. These are 3 ships from Columbus's voyage to the New World. Can you identify each ship as either a caravel or a carrack? And how can you tell? Take a minute, pause the slide, take a look at the picture. Which ones are carracks, which ones are caravel? So hopefully you were able to identify that the Santa Maria and the Pinta are shown as carracks, the square sails, whereas the Nina, pictured on the far left of the image, is a caravel. Notice the 3 lateen triangular sails on the Nina and the combination of the square and lateen rigs on the Santa Maria and the Pinta. So now let's discuss the Dutch Vloot. In the 17th century, the Dutch rose as a powerful maritime empire, and that was due largely to the development of the Vloot. What makes this ship particularly notable was the fact that it was not designed as a military vessel in any capacity. Military ships were extremely expensive and time-consuming to build, so the Vloot dramatically changed how quickly and how cheaply ships could be produced. The slow and expensive production of large ships that could make long ocean trips was an obstacle to exploration and access to new trade routes. But the Dutch were successful at producing ships that put them at the front of innovation when it came to shipbuilding. This is going to return us to our learning objective question from the beginning of the lecture. How did cross-cultural interactions result in the diffusion of technology and facilitate changes in patterns of trade and travel from 1450 to 1750? This slide will give you some context and some details to help you answer that question. And I want to remind you that the SAQ on the exam will be derived from the learning objectives and key concepts. It's important that you understand how to turn any learning objective into a question and then answer that question with relevant context and details. So let's start with China and the Islamic empires interact with European states. Caused. Europe interacted with both China and the Islamic empires through trade from the Silk Roads and trans-Saharan trade routes. We see improved navigation and military tools. Those interactions gave European maritime technology such as the compass, the astrolabe, and better charts and maps, gunpowder, and the lateen sail. And lastly, more efficient and longer transoceanic travel. New ships like the caravel and the carrack were developed that could travel faster and farther. Combined with an understanding of how currents and trade winds worked, Europeans kicked off the age of exploration. Okay, so here we have an excerpt. This is an excerpt from the first voyage around the world, which is an account of Magellan's circumnavigation by Anthony Pigafetta. I want you to notice that this excerpt is actually written in your discussion, your reading guides. I want you to read and annotate the excerpt in your reading guides and then answer the questions, which will be featured on the next slide. So if we take a look at the next slide, after reading this excerpt, I want you to answer the questions in your reading guide. 1. This is the first part of a day's entry in the account of Magellan's travel. After this, Pigafetta describes seeing sharks for the first time. Why do you think giving the details of their location comes first in these entries? Question number 2, what specific language gives us clues about the technology or innovations they were using to determine their location? And then 3, what do you think is the intended purpose of detailing their location in this account of Magellan's circumnavigation? So once again, read and annotate the excerpt that is in your reading guides, and then answer these 3 questions in your reading guides. All right, and with that, we have wrapped up our discussion of topic 4.1. Here you can see some of the key ideas that you should write down in a separate notebook just to have as kind of a little study guide for you guys. Europeans received technology from China, Muslims, and the Greeks, such as the compass, the astrolabe, astronomy charts, and better cartography, as well as the lateen sail, which helped to spur the age of exploration. Important innovative ships include the caravel, the carrack, and the float, and the reasons Europeans wanted to engage in more maritime activity included a search for religious tolerance, glory and wealth, better lives, and the need to find better trade routes. As always, please take a look at the video link in the description to Heimler's AP World Review Topic 4.1 video, just to wrap everything up. Have a great day.